Welcome to 30 Minutes of Faith. We have with us today John Boisa, who is the director of the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council. Thank you, John, for being here.
It's good to be here, John.
Let's start with where you were born and raised and how you came to be.
How I came to be. I was born here in Citrus Heights, California. Actually born here downtown in the hospital, and I grew up in Citrus Heights, suburb here of Sacramento at the time. Went to school at Coyle Avenue School, then went to Will Rogers Intermediate School, and graduated proudly from San Juan High School in 1982.
Go Trojans, Spartans?
Spartans.
Spartans.
Spartans. Yes.
And they've just remodeled that high school.
They did.
Really nice.
I visit my mom, who lives in Citrus Heights today, and every once in a while I have the opportunity to drive by San Juan High School, and I'm enjoying the new look.
Did you go away for college or any of those things?
I did. After high school, I went to UC Berkeley, and I was a student there for 4 years, attended the ROTC program there, and then after college, I was commissioned as a naval officer in the U.S. Navy, and then went to serve in the Navy for 4 years, lived in Sasebo, Japan, and I was on surface ships, and then after that, came back to the States and began looking for a new line of work.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have two brothers and a sister, and Clifford lives in Rio Oso, California. I have a brother up north in Washington, and my sister lives in Folsom.
And Rio Oso's down by?
Rio Oso is up Highway 99, just before Yuba City. So it's a very tiny little farming area, and my brother and his family have made a nice home there.
Good.
And,
married and children?
Oh, yeah. I married in 1995, and I have a wife, Miriam, and we have two children. Sophia is 12 years old, and Sam is 9, and we make our home in Stockton, California.
Everybody's healthy, and
we all do well there. Miriam is a public defender in San Joaquin County, and we're members of Temple Israel in Stockton.
Did you have a happy childhood?
I think so, sure. I grew up with mom and dad here, went to school, had lots of friends, and rode my bike around the suburban streets of Citrus Heights. I don't know how it could have been any better.
Lifelong practicing member of the Jewish faith?
I am not, as a matter of fact. I did not grow up Jewish. I converted in 1997. I decided that it was time to look for a spiritual home, and I was in a lot of ways searching for that, and I found the Jewish community, and I found them it was at the Jewish Food Festival in Stockton. It's an annual event that Temple puts on. It's their big bake sale. We make a lot of Jewish food there, and we sell to the community as part of our fundraising efforts, and it's really a part of the community. And I took Miriam Lyle there as a date, and sometime later she became my wife. But it was there that learned a little bit about the Jewish faith and found that it was something that I could apply to my own life, and decided to do that when it came time to start thinking about building a family. Had Jewish friends here in Citrus Heights, and always enjoyed knowing them. Andy Silber was a friend of mine in high school, and I got to know him and his mom and dad, Paul and Joanne. I think you know who they are.
I do.
Yeah. And so did not grow up as a Jew, so I did not have a lot of the normative Jewish experiences that Jews often have when they're growing up. Didn't go to Camp Swig or any of those things. But later in life, I decided that it was the thing for me and for my family. When I was starting a family, it's quite a nerving thing when you begin that, because you're planning on having children, and then the idea that you're going to raise these children, and of course you're kind of worried, what if I make a mistake? I don't want to raise terrorists or criminals, so I need some help. And I knew that, and it occurred to me that finding a spiritual home and a spiritual religious community was part of the help that I would need in raising a family to be healthy and strong. And that's what I did.
Let's go back to Food Festival for a minute. Do you cook?
I cook, well, yeah, occasionally I like to cook, mostly in the summer. Enjoy grilling things out in the backyard. Sometimes we have friends there and enjoy the a little respite from the hot summer Stockton, summers in Stockton.
Do you see much difference between Stockton and Sacramento?
Sacramento has got a little more of an urban feel to it in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it's a larger community. Stockton, I enjoy living in Stockton because it has the feel of a smaller town. The sense that you could go anywhere in Stockton and look around for a little bit, and you'll probably see somebody there that you know. And that's probably the biggest thing I enjoy about living in Stockton, is that it really does have that feeling of a small town community. And it's there's 250,000 people living in Stockton, so it is pretty large, but still, wherever you go, whether it's the movie show, if you're going to go to the movies, or if you go to a community play or something like that, if you just take a minute and look around, you'll find somebody that you know from some other aspect of your life, and that's something I enjoy about Stockton.
Let's go back to the Navy for a minute. What caused you to pursue ROTC?
Well, I asked myself that a lot, usually when I was in the Navy. No, I was looking at ways to finance college and looking for a career and
Some structure and discipline.
some structure and discipline and a sense of serving. I think there was, when I was a young man looking for college, there was a sense that looking for a way to serve and to give something back to the country and the community that I grew up in. I think growing up in high school, I was very much aware of the advantages and the gifts that society gives to you. I grew up in, as I said, Citrus Heights, a safe and welcoming community. I was very much mindful of that growing up, that these were all things that I should be grateful for. And out of that gratitude, I felt it was important to find a way to serve and to provide something back. And the military seemed like an appropriate thing to do. It seemed like a way to satisfy that debt, if you will.
I understand that very well. One of my good friends is a Marine. Of course, once a Marine, always a Marine. And in fact, we share grandchildren. Our son is married to his daughter. But I keep reminding him he can't even get a paycheck without going to the Navy to get it. And we tease a lot about that.
Well, when we were in the Navy, we were very much grateful for our naval infantry, which is what we like to call the Marines, and I know they love to hear that too. And so
I'll have to remind him of that.
One of the thing I did in the Navy was serve on amphibious ships. So I had the joy of shipping around large groups of Marines back and forth around the Sea of Japan, and taking them from Okinawa, bringing them up to Korea, letting them camp out in Korea for a little bit, bringing them back to Okinawa. That was pretty much my Navy experience, and so I enjoyed moving those Marines around. Kevin Hicks is a good friend of mine, went to college with me, lives in Stockton with me. He's a deputy district attorney, and he was in the Marine Corps. And so, yes, in the military, I met a lot of Marines there, and always enjoyed being with them. Sometimes it was fun to tease back and forth. We had a lot of fun.
Would you want your children to go into the military?
Well, I want my kids, I think, to find their own path. I want my kids to be satisfied in the things they do. I want them to have the options that I had growing up. So I think I want for them to find a meaningful place in the world. And if for them that means the military, then that would be it.
So be it.
So be it. I think that's what I really want for my kids, is it's for them to grow and develop into strong, independent adults.
Now, how did you find your way to the JCRC?
Well, how did I do that? Well, I've been a social worker for about 20 years, and it was about 10 years into that, I decided to get involved in politics. And I did that because I was a social worker in pain. I had my caseloads were about 3 times what anyone could be expected to really fulfill. And I knew that something had to change. So I got involved in politics. And I've been doing that for about 10 years, doing policy consulting for the Assembly, involved in campaigns, political campaigns. My job prior to JCRC was working for the Senate Democratic Caucus, and I was organizing voters in Modesto and neighboring towns there. But with every political campaign, they come to an end, and so I had to find the next step. And so answered a an ad for the JCRC director, and surprisingly, they gave me a call. And after some time of interviewing, they felt I was the person for them. And so that was about 6 or 7 months ago, and since then I've had the privilege of being the spokesperson for the Jewish community and serving and hopefully adding something to a healthy Jewish communal experience here in the Sacramento region.
What's the population of the Jewish people in Greater Sacramento?
That's a question we ask all the time, and we use different estimates of that. It's hard sometimes to estimate that. We've never done a population study per se, but based upon some basic assumptions that you might find in the census data that we take, we think it might be between 20 and 40,000 Jews living in the community.
And would you think that most of them are active in pursuing the beliefs of the Jewish people?
Yeah, Jewish traditions, I think, in the Jewish community is made up of a great many streams of Jewish practice. It's important to know that the Jewish people really comprise a nation. And just like the American nation of people, there's all kinds of ways to be Jewish. There are people who are religious Jews, and within religious Judaism, there's many different streams of practice. There's Reform, there's Conservative, there's Orthodox, there's something called Reconstructionism. There's a whole variety of ways to experience Jewish spiritual life. But also there are Jews who are not religious, and they describe themselves as ethnically Jewish or culturally Jewish, and they're as Jewish as anybody else. So I think what I would tell people listening is that the Jewish people are truly a nation of people, and made up of every opinion, every stripe of way to be in a community that you could see here in our larger American community. Think about what it means to be an American. Right? There's all kinds of Americans. There are religious Americans, non-religious, Americans of different colors and ethnic backgrounds, and this is true of the Jewish people as well.
What does the JCRC want to accomplish in Greater Sacramento?
Well, the role of the JCRC is really to be a number of things. First, we're the spokesperson for the organized Jewish community. So the Jewish community needs to have one place where we can communicate with the larger world and have a unified voice in the things that we want to talk about. And that's the role of the JCRC. Other things that we do is we are the community organizers in a way of JCRC. So part of our portfolio is to organize the Jewish community when it comes under attack. So a big piece of that is combating anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has been with the world for a long, long time, and it has not gone away. And it makes us very busy in addressing the challenges that come from people that wish us harm. And it falls to us to bring the Jewish community together and find the response to that challenge.
And the Interfaith Council has always cited and wanted to be a part of fighting that too.
Well, John, you and the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento, ICGS, you guys have been great friends to religious pluralism and interfaith cooperation, and so we're always very grateful for the work of the ICGS and RCC-TV. What an asset this program and the other kind of work and the other programming that you put on, television program, these are huge gifts, I think, to the larger community, and certainly the Jewish community is grateful for them, I would say.
There's not that many Jews in the world.
There's not. There's about between 13 and 15 million.
But the world at large sort of just thinks they're everywhere, and there's millions of them all over the place. There really isn't.
Yeah, you're right. It isn't. But it's, I think, a feature of anti-Semitism to inflate the impact in the existence of Jews and the threat that our opponents often portray us as. They seem to bring a lot of rhetoric to this and exaggerate, I think, the impact of Jews in the world They have a purpose in inflaming anti-Semitism, and part of that means to exaggerate our presence in the world, but our footprint is very small in terms of numbers. And certainly, it's often a canard that Jews are masters of the universe and rule over finance and banking and these kinds of things, but the truth of the matter is that we are a small minority in the world, and
scratching and clawing with the rest
trying
of us.
trying to make our way. Yeah, and we do well when we're in environments that are welcoming to us, and we survive when we're in environments that are hostile.
And is Greater Sacramento, by and large, welcoming to
Well,
the Jewish people?
I would say that. I think we have some real evidence of that too. There is a pretty active boycott, divest, and sanction movement, which is really kind of the new anti-Semitism.
Is that across America?
Well, these are, I wouldn't say it's across America, but Sacramento has a pretty active cell in that. There's groups of people that keep us pretty busy monitoring this effort to delegitimize Israel and isolate it internationally. And the Jewish community here in Sacramento perceives that as a threat because it really does attack the continuity of the Jewish people when we attack the existence of Israel. Not as particular politics, but the very right of it to exist. And we have been dealing with that. But Sacramento at large has been very welcoming to the Jewish community. We had a campaign at the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op, and 83% of the members of that food co-op said no to this kind of anti-Semitism. And I assure you, the Jewish community does not make up 83% of the food co-op's membership. But what that tells us is that all sorts of people that maybe don't even know a Jewish person, but a whole lot of people come to our defense, and what they have said pretty clearly in that example is that this kind of divisive, hostile politics, this idea that we're going to attack the Jewish people in the state of Israel in this propagandistic way, that is not welcome. And I will tell you that I think the Jewish community was very grateful to see that kind of result from the food co-op.
Yeah, and the 83% of the people were pleased to see it too.
I think so. I think so.
What do you do for your hobbies in your spare time? And do you have any spare time?
Well, what I do is I try to rest a little bit because there's not a lot of spare time. But things I like to do, give you an example. I like to ride my bicycle. Our family has bikes, and we try to take some time and on a weekend perhaps, and find a way to go travel somewhere on a bicycle, ride around, usually just ride around town, just take the kids to go get some yogurt somewhere. Maybe we're going to go visit Angel Island real soon and bring the bikes there, and we're looking forward to that.
That's a great run. I've walked Angel Island before, and that's a wonderful little tour.
Yeah.
Now, when I go to worship service on Friday nights with my Jewish friends, one of the things I really like is the music. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of music. Now, every religion has music, and, we sing hymns and all those other things. But where I have gone with my Jewish friends, it's just sort of an extra dose of music. Mm-hmm. And for me, music is good music is a universal language. Everybody speaks that language, and they like it. Does that spill over into your home, into your personal being? I mean, are you a lover of good music?
I am a lover of good music. I'm often envious. I wish I could produce good music. I cannot. Whenever I hear beautiful music, I always fantasize about producing it. But no, of course, we appreciate that. And you're right. Music is a part of a lot of religious practices. In the Jewish community, music has different roles depending on the faith stream, if you will. Sometimes, like in Reformed temples, for example, in my Reformed temple, music is a big part of the worship service, and some of the Reformed temples here in Sacramento as well. But other faith practices have different rules about that, or different ways to incorporate music. Sometimes it's just the human voice. But certainly, I think for a lot of people, and I think it's been my personal experience, that music brings an emotive connection to prayer and observance.
That's nicely said.
Yes, that it really does add to the emotive connection there. And so, yeah, I'd have to agree with that it's an important part of my observance of Jewish faith.
When I was a boy and we'd go to the Saturday matinees and watch the newsreels, usually what we saw of the Jewish faith was the cantor was a male, the man could really sing, and it was usually, somebody with a great voice playing that role. And the rabbi was always an older, well-respected, man of the cloth who had been around a long time. Now these days we go, for instance, Senator Steinberg's wife, I forget her first name, but she's got a beautiful singing voice.
Yes.
I've listened to her on several occasions.
Yes.
And we've got some really terrific female rabbis. When did that all start to unfold? Was that just been the last generation?
I would think so, yeah. Around the 70s, I think. The Jewish community, like every community, has to respond and adapt as it grows and develops. And Judaism is not, and never has been, a static religion or communal experience. I've always found that being Jewish, one of the things that attracts me to being Jewish is its very practical nature. It's about finding ways for a Jewish community to survive and develop and be a moral people. And that imperative has had to be flexible to address the changing nature of the world that Jewish communities find themselves in. So, I don't recall the year when, say, the first woman rabbi became ordained, and that has been different for different faith streams, depending on their particular view of how to live a life based on Torah.
It's a sweet and nurturing feel in the synagogue, for me personally.
But some of that change does come with some controversy around it. Just as our world changes, there are people in our world that don't want to see that change, and they want to hold on to traditional ways of being Jewish. And so the Jewish community in its diversity has found different ways to address the questions that are raised by things like the women's movement. And now I will tell you that in reform practice, that the involvement of women has been complete. That we can't imagine having reform Jewish life without women being a central part of that, which I think reflects the reality of men and women living in our modern American society.
That seems godly also.
I think so.
Our mothers were very important to us. We wouldn't be here without them.
Right.
And the women are an important thing.
I think godly is a good way to put it. I think that this is the product of a serious moral reflection that goes on in our lives, both in Jewish life and in other faith communities, in the Mormon community. There's a real imperative, I think, and I think it's one of the reasons why we have religious traditions, is that we are continually asking ourselves, are we doing the right thing? What are we doing? Are we leading a moral and godly life? And those questions lead to the kinds of changes that we've seen in faith practices as the years go by, as decades pass us. We started in the 70s with the women's movement. Right now, if you look at not just the Jewish community, but all religious faith communities are dealing with new challenges, new ethical challenges about what do we do with gay and lesbian people, for example. How do we respond to that community? On one hand, they are suffering, and Jews see something familiar in that kind of suffering and feel a need to call to that. But also there are Jews in the community that are still struggling with the challenges presented by an open gay community. And of course, that other faith groups are still working through those questions about how to respond to that minority. But just as we responded to the emergence of women in the 70s with the women's movement, we'll find our way. And I say we, I mean everyone in American society will find our way with that. Yeah. And ultimately, I believe that is all of our faith communities are morally engaged, and we will find moral answers to these challenges and questions.
Now, I want to ask you a question, and this has no judgments in it. I just want to tell you about a favorite. When I was a child, my father and mother read to us from a book called Stories of the Old Testament. And so we got to know all of the prophets, and Ruth and Naomi, and we knew them well, and we heard them over and over again. Now, when I've gone to the synagogue, I hear the wonderful stories from Abraham and the family there forward. Do your children get to hear about the great stories and things of the Old Testament people?
I'll tell you a funny story about that. When I approached the rabbi and told him that I wanted to convert, and part of that conversation referred to the Old Testament, and right away I had my first lesson in Jewish life, which is that Jews don't call it the Old Testament.
Right.
We call it the Torah. And certainly, it is a commandment of God, right, to teach our children about the Torah. The Torah is the central spiritual document that binds Jews and Jewish life and informs our moral, ethical, and social lives. And so, of course, it's I believe, a divine mandate that I raise my children with knowledge of these stories and in general, the things that the Torah, has to teach us.
Sometimes I open the Torah, the copy I have, and the Old Testament of the King James Version, and see how things are going, and they're going very nicely.
Yes.
And I just enjoy it. And part of it was, as a little boy, it's what I heard and came to know and to love and all those other things.
Yes.
Well, we're soon to close and running out of time, but will you stay with the JCRC now for a good many years? Have you found a niche and a spot that you love?
Well, it is a challenge to create really this job. This job has to be created. It is constantly evolving. It really does reflect the needs as the Jewish community experiences them day to day. But certainly it has been a huge privilege and an honor to be a part of that. And it's very exciting to join a community that wants to do good work and wants to focus on the ways we can build up rather than argue and fight. And what a privilege that is for me to find work to do that. And I'm every day grateful for the opportunity to build upon that.
Well, and I'll say to you as we end, thank you, friend.
Well, thank you,
It's nice to
John.
have you here.
It was good to have you too, John.